Welcome back to the FastAPI tutorial series. I'm Bassel, and today we're diving deeper into FastAPI to explore two essential concepts: query parameters and path variables. These will help you make your APIs more flexible, powerful, and dynamic. In the last video, we built our first FastAPI endpoint. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. But if you're ready to level up your API skills, let's get started. We'll continue with the same project we started earlier, but if you're new here, it's simple to set up. Just create a new main.py file and paste this code right straight into it. Okay, so let's now run our UVcorn server. So what I'm gonna do is first activate the environment. So I'm gonna type in here source fastapi_env/bin/activate, hit enter. And then I'm going to run the UVcorn server with the auto reload option enabled. So I'm going to type in here UVcorn main colon app space -- reload. Okay, so now that we started our server, let's visit the URL. So I'm going to type in here localhost colon 8000. Oops. 8000. Okay, so this is our welcome message right here. So what are query parameters? They're actually optional values passed in the URL. So just like this example right here. So this is our URL, and then we put a question mark. So this marks the start of the parameters, and then key equals value, and those key value pairs are separated using the ampersand. So in this case, we have two query parameters: the color, which has the blue value, and the sort, which has the newest as a value. So let's add an endpoint to demonstrate. Okay, so in this simple function, we have the skip and the limit parameters. They're actually query parameters. So the skip is gonna be an integer and it defaults to 0, and the limit is gonna be also an integer and it defaults to 10. So let's see it in action. So I'm going to my browser and navigate to the /items, and then add a question mark, and then skip equals 5, ampersand, limit equals 20, and let's hit enter. Here we go. So this is the value passed of the skip and the value passed for the limit. So what if we just omit the limit? So if I remove the limit from the query parameters and hit enter, then I get the default value, which is 10. And if we remove the skip as well, we get the default value, which is 0. Okay, so going to the Swagger UI interactive API docs. So I'm going to localhost port 8000 /docs, hit enter. Okay, so this is our Swagger UI. So we have two routes right here: the read route, which is at the root path /, and then we have the read items, which is at the /items root. And if we expand this read items right here, we can see that it takes the skip parameter, which is an integer, defaults to 0, and the limit, an integer, defaults to 10. So if we hit the try it out button and then change these values to maybe 5 and 30, hit execute, so we get the same response right here. Okay, so another interesting thing is that we can have required query parameters. So if we just remove this default value, so we're gonna switch the skip parameter to be a positional parameter instead of being a keyword argument parameter. So what we get now is actually a required query parameter. So moving back to the Swagger UI, let's give it a quick refresh. So as you can see right now, the skip parameter has become required. So what about the path variables? The path variables are actually dynamic parts of the URL itself. They're often used to identify resources. So in this example, we can see that we have here a path variable. So /bol/ and then we specify our path variable right here. And below is an example. So in this case, the value of the path variable bol ID is going to be silver bol ID. Let's now modify our code to add an endpoint that takes a path variable. So in this example, the item ID is actually a path variable. So let's see this in action. Okay, so right now I'm gonna navigate to localhost and then port 8000 /items and then / and give it an ID, let's say 25. So here we go. We get the item ID 25. And what's even more interesting about FastAPI is its automatic data validation. So it actually validates the query parameters and the path variables based off of the type hints or annotations that we use when defining our parameters. So if we passed a string right here, then we're gonna get a validation error. Okay, so to wrap things up, let's combine both the query parameters and path variables into one function. So I'm gonna modify this function right here and add a query parameter. Okay, so right here, the Q is actually a query parameter and the item ID right here is a path variable. So let's test this out. So going back to the browser, I'm going to add 10 right here. So we get the item ID 10. Let's add our Q parameter. So Q equals FastAPI and hit enter. And here we go. We get the item ID 10 and then Q FastAPI. Let's head now to the interactive docs. Give it a quick refresh. So this is our read item endpoint. And we can see that we have a path variable right here that is actually required. And then we have a query parameter that is optional right here. So if we hit the try it out button and then give it an ID of 20 and a query string BasselTech and hit execute. So as you can see, we get the same exact result. Okay, so final thoughts on the path variables and query parameters. So a path variable is always part of the URL. The query parameter is attached to the end of the URL. The path variable often identifies a specific resource, while the query parameter just filters source the results or just provides additional info. So that's it for today. We've learned how to handle query parameters and path variables in FastAPI, making our APIs more dynamic and user-friendly. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Stay tuned for more FastAPI tutorials, and thanks for watching.